Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Loans aplenty, a new CEO, under-18s derby victory, defeat for United women at Stamford Bridge. Going behind the scenes at the academy, there may have been no men's first team fixture this weekend, but plenty has happened and there's plenty to discuss. A very warm welcome to the Manchester United Weekly podcast, where we delve into all of the above. Thank you for joining us. We'll also, of course, be previewing United's trip to Newport County in the FA Cup fourth round, a first ever trip to Rodney Parade, and an exciting one for supporters. Probably a little bit less so for the team who are aware of the old cup set, a banana skin on the march with Eric's Army, or could it be a cup set as big as MK Dons, Southend, York City or Bournemouth? Let's see. I'm Harry Robinson, Jack Tate is alongside me. Our patrons get early access to this episode and to all episodes ad-free, and they also get a 10 to 20 minute bonus Q&A every week. And sometimes they get to lead our discussions every so often, including today. If you want to sign up for anything from £1.50 a month, head to patreon.com/United Weekly Podcast, and you can find out details on how to do that. Let's begin with an off-pitch matter, Jack, and I should say we'll be playing guest player as well, as always, on these early in the week episodes. But let's start with an off-the-pitch matter, the appointment of Omar Berrada as CEO. He'll start work at United, it seems, in the summer, after leaving Manchester City, where he had worked as Chief Football Operations Officer. Your immediate thoughts?
Surprise, more than anything, to be honest.
Yeah,
there was
out
the
of nowhere.
Ornstein exclusive a couple of days ago, and then within an hour there was an official statement from the club. Yeah, I mean, there hadn't been any rumblings that Ineos and Jim Ratcliffe were going to be appointing any sort of high-level staff within the immediate future. I think we all thought it would take, at least sort of a month or two to kind of get things in place. I think it's a positive sign in that it's someone with a good track record coming from a football club and a football group that are often touted as being one of the best run, albeit may have done it through illegal means, as may be seen in the next few months or years, however long those investigations take. But to be honest, I think the biggest thing for me, putting aside for a second who Omar Berrada is and how good he will be in terms of his role as CEO at United, I think is also just the sign that maybe Ineos and Ratcliffe's power, at least for now, isn't being curtailed too much by the Glazers.
Yeah.
Because this is a sporting role, but it's also very much a commercial one as well. And this felt like it was in that kind of potentially murky grey area where you might see a little bit of a collision course, let's say, between Ineos and the Glazers over who really has the power to appoint these kind of people. And it sounds like it was an Ineos appointment that was approved by the Glazers, which I think is a good sign, and hopefully the start of Ineos' power not being curtailed too much by that family in America.
Yeah, we spoke last week about what we wanted. We were answering a question from one of our patrons, Tony Ryan, about what if we were in Ratcliffe's position, what we would do. And I think we put sporting, a kind of appointing a sporting director third in the list. Now, Omar Berrada is not coming in as a sporting director, but it's another equally important position, CEO. And then I also spoke about James W. Gibson's first 100 days in charge at United back in 1931, 1932. And I spoke about what Gibson achieved in those first 100 days. And I think the line I used in the book I wrote that included Gibson as one of the characters was a paraphrase from Abraham Lincoln. He left nothing for tomorrow which could be done today. And so far, Ratcliffe is following a similar path. This was quick, a lot quicker than anticipated. And you're right, it was a huge surprise. I was at Old Trafford at an academy event on Saturday. I left after a very long day, sat down at the pub, and an hour after I'd left for suddenly United appointed a new CEO. And it's one of those weird things where you've been at the place where obviously something important's happening and you've got absolutely no idea. So it really came out of the blue. But yeah, you're right. This is the first kind of genuine action. And as we said last week, meeting fan groups is excellent. And those who are at those meetings with Ratcliffe have spoken very positively about his engagement and transparency. But this is an actual action and a powerful antidote to any fears that Ratcliffe and Ineos would be hamstrung by the Glazers' kind of maintained power, the power that they still have. Now, as you say, that could all still come, and I'm sure at some point down the line there will be a clash, and United will be restricted in some way because the Glazers are still here, because it's how they work. But this is definitely a good start, a clear Ineos decision, a seemingly world-class hire. I don't know enough about him personally, but from what we read, and also it's just it's very different, isn't it? After, this is a line in The Athletic I thought was pertinent. After Martin Edwards, Peter Kenyon, David Gill, Ed Woodward, Richard Arnold and Patrick Stewart, Omar Berrada will become United's first chief executive hired externally rather than promoted from an existing role. That's pretty extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think at United, he not only the first external hire, but probably the person who has been closest to the sporting side of a football club previously before joining this role.
Absolutely,
he wasn't, he wasn't a sporting director or anything of the sort at City, but he was much closer to the ground in terms of dealing with the sporting side of the club. The big one that keeps getting touted around
compared to Woodward.
Well, yeah, exactly. The one that keeps getting thrown around is he was heavily involved in the Haaland signing. I don't think, nor probably any of our listeners were following the sort of internal workings of Man City as they were making that Haaland signing to say too much about his involvement there. But, he seems someone that, like, CEO at a football club is a slightly weird position because it does straddle this line between the commercial and the sporting side of the club. And so it is hard to find people that have experience on both. United have, I think, sort of just believed that the stature of the club and its sort of weight of history over the last 10 years will somehow magically make the sporting side work if we throw enough money at it, and we just focused on, appointing more commercially experienced people into that role. I think Omar Berrada
What a cynical view, Jack. not like it's entirely accurate.
I think Omar Berrada has, at least on paper, one of the best CVs that you could ask for in terms of having experience on both sides of that line.
Yeah, should we just run through that quickly, because I had no prior knowledge of him or his work. Here are the headline takeaways from the various profiles that I've read since his appointment. And I think the most probably valuable one is written by The Athletic's Paul Ballas, who mainly covers City and Pep Guardiola and has long had a relationship with that kind of side of City. So it's valuable because it's not just a kind of puff piece from a United writer. Not that I'm saying that Laurie Whitwell or Andy Mitten would do that, but it can be easy to be drawn into it when all your sources are speaking very positively. So coming from a City side is very useful. The first thing to state is he was not and is not going to be a director of football or a sporting director or anything like that. He comes initially from a commercial background. He then transitioned to being involved with some sporting decisions at City, including the Haaland signing and the signing of Emmett Laporte, and basically every signing and sale since about 2018, it seems. And his role in that wouldn't be talking to the players about tactics or where they fit into the team or kind of selling them the dream. It would be coming in after that and talking contracts, which is a very useful thing. And so, to clarify, he's not a Rutherford John Murtagh. He's an actual CEO with strong commercial experience, something that's obviously necessary at United, but have that experience and history of sporting involvement too, which is a massive positive after Woodward and Richard Arnold's ineptness on the sporting front. I think Richard Arnold was a positive step away from Woodward because he didn't have the sporting knowledge, but didn't bullshit either, and admitted he didn't have that, so handed it over to others. His management of those others probably wasn't good enough, and his management of the club wasn't good enough, but it was better than Woodward. Omar Berrada was chief football operations officer at City, so he worked under a CEO and with a director of football, so it's certainly a step up for him in size of club and in position. There are some people who are saying, why are we talking about CEOs and executive appointments? What would be your point to that, Jack?
Well, I can understand why it might be a little bit boring, and it feels like quite far removed from what's going on the pitch. But ultimately, a lot of what we see on the pitch is defined by the people you have in place trying to move the club forward in a different direction. So I think there's two things probably that make this important. Not necessarily that it's guaranteed to be a success, but that make it important. And I think one is that it's the first concrete move that Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos have made. And that in itself is
and
a
it's
big
come
deal.
so quickly.
Exactly. It's been what, a month
and
almost.
under the radar as well.
Yeah, it's been a month almost to the day since it was confirmed on Christmas Eve that Jim Ratcliffe was going to come in. The deal hasn't even been officially ratified yet by the Premier League, and yet, they're already making big decisions on personnel, which is a good sign, I think, for, how outsized their role might be in sort of shaping what the club is going to look like over the next few years. And then I think, secondly, it's important just because, as you mentioned with Richard Arnold, the CEO ultimately is the leader of all of the other people in the club. And they're not going to make every single decision, but they do define a direction. And I think even symbolically, for now, before Omar Berrada actually is able to get to work, I think just symbolically having someone who is a complete departure from anything else and anyone else that we've seen at Man United before, I think is a big deal in, it's not easy, even if you have a new owner in Jim Ratcliffe, it's not easy to change the culture and performances of an organisation that has clearly been, at least on the sporting side, underperforming for a decade.
Yeah.
That is not easy to do. And I think having someone that comes from outside and a complete sea change and doesn't have any ties to what's gone before can be an important step in trying to create a bit of a reset and sort of changing the way that United is going to work internally. Yeah,
there's a few more positives to run through before I list a couple of concerns. Premier League experience of Manchester as a city and attracting players to Manchester, which might sound silly, but as I think Omar Berrada said himself in an interview that I was reading, it can take quite a lot to convince wives and families to move from places like Barcelona to Manchester. And I think understanding that process is pretty handy to have. So there's certainly that. There's also the fact that he's not an Ineos man. I was a little worried that United would just be overtaken by people close to Brailsford and Ratcliffe. That's not the case. And I think that's a positive. I have two concerns. The first is that it's a step up for him. It might be an external hire, which is great for the reasons we've just said. It might be someone with good experience, but this will still be someone learning on the job. United's new CEO is someone working as a CEO for the first time ever in their career. So it might not. It's a risk. The second is I remain concerned. I spoke about this a bit last week and a bit in the newsletter that I do, that kind of about Dave Brailsford and Ineos's attitude to what's right and wrong. And this was another quote from The Athletic where it said, as Brailsford has previously said of Ineos's ethos, and this is a quote from Brailsford, doing it the right way, and we can push it right up to the line, is important. Now, this is relevant because Omar Berrada is obviously coming from City and was in a prominent role at the time when they're alleged to have mounted a widespread financial cheating campaign. And that does concern me. That this move was done quickly is great for the reasons we've said. And it's not for United to assess the truth of the allegations against City, but have we done full due diligence here? I don't know. My worry is that Brailsford and Ineos's attitude in other sports seems to be one that doesn't really put great emphasis on things like this. It's as if they ask the questions, is he good? Will he help us win? And if the answer to those two things is yes, they'll be happy. But I think going back to the point I made last week, this is Manchester United and it's a one-off. It's a club with a history so rich and a support so wide and a financial base so large. We don't need a nation state. We don't need to push things right up to the line of right and wrong. You should do things right and pursue, as Matt Busby said, pursue perfection and settle for excellence if you can't get there. It's the Busby mantra, and I think it's something the club to stick to. Do you think those concerns are valid, or is that me just being, is this me being a member of the Wokerati, Jack?
No,
Joey Barton will be on my case.
I think it's Total One, Matt Letizia as well. No, I think it's completely valid, those concerns. I think at this point we're still operating very much in the dark about what any of this is going to look like once things are settled and once Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos have, and Dave Brailsford and others have, sort of more concrete day-to-day control. You know, they're obviously going to delegate a lot of things to people like Omar Berrada and others that they appoint, but they are going to have a fairly wide-ranging ability to dictate how things run at the club, and we still don't really know what that looks like. So for all of the on-paper sort of goodness that's come from the Omar Berrada hire, you know, we don't know whether he's going to perform. We don't really even know what Ineos is going to say his remit is. You know, they might actually take a lot of the sporting side off of his plate and pass it on to whoever they appoint as a sporting director. And we don't know who that is going to be just yet.
Yeah, just on that, there's two sides to that argument, isn't there? One is that to convince him to leave City, which is, by all accounts, a pretty amazing place to work for in that kind of role, because you've got unlimited funds and lots of great people around you. You can question the morals another time. But to convince him to leave City, he must have been given a very good proposition, which doesn't just involve a higher wage, but a serious amount of control. The alternative argument is this is a step up for him. He might be happy with slightly less control than a more experienced CEO. You can think either argument is true. I'm not really sure, but yeah. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, and then on the last point about doing things right, I think the risk here is that, and in fairness, you've kind of laid out some potential worries about specifically Ineos and in particular Dave Brailsford and some of his comments. I think there's also a more general risk that, Jim Ratcliffe has come in as a new owner and his remit is almost entirely to not be the Glazers. That is sort of what he needs to do. And he will want to prove that he is a complete sort of sea change from everything we've seen before under them, and also prove that he can get us back to being a winning football club. And there is, I think, a general risk when there is so much desperation to do that you can start to take a sort of anything it takes goes. And, especially if you see United maybe get close to winning the league, or, in the latter stages of the Champions League and feeling like we're close to being able to overtake City or Liverpool or Arsenal or whoever it is that we're trying to sort of chase down, that, that desperation could lead to pushing that line a little bit too far, like you say. I would hope that isn't the case.
I don't think you should even be thinking about pushing the line. It's just not Maybe it's a romantic view, and United obviously have committed some absolute sins in every year, in every decade of our history. And to say it's all kind of romantic and perfect is bollocks. Like, even after the Munich air disaster, we treated some of the survivors of that appallingly, and there's been plenty of incidents where United have treated people terribly. But I will still hold a vision and a hope of something better. And A, there's more attention on United than anyone, so if you do cheat, you're going to be found out. But B, we're in a position now where we're very fortunate because our rise came at the same time as that of the Premier League and the decline of football hooliganism, which means we have kind of the biggest supporter base, certainly of English clubs in world football, and huge amounts of money. In that privileged position, we then helped set up financial fair play, which does, to a certain extent, favour kind of the status quo. And you can have your arguments around that, but I like the fact that the kind of modern United over the last 10 or 15 years has made it a point to uphold kind of certain footballing values. There have obviously been times where we've not done that, but with, for example, the European Super League, I don't mean the whole club, but there are certain people within the club trying to do that. And at the moment, you look at the last 2 years, how many times have senior figures at United given this real commitment to financial fair play and the profit and sustainability rules of the Premier League? I like that. That should be our role within football, to kind of uphold fair play, because we're in that privileged position. So that's what I'm worried about, really.
And it's worth saying as well that I don't believe any of these allegations have been proved, but during Dave Brailsford's time running British Cycling and running Team Sky, the British-based cycling team that had incredible success in the Tour de France, a lot of riders were accused of taking performance-enhancing drugs. Chris Froome has been plagued with those accusations for a long time while he was at Team Sky. I think I'm right in saying I don't think any of those allegations have been proven.
No.
And, we have no...
But that's where this concern comes from, yeah.
Yeah, we have no reason to believe that they are true, but they are allegations that are out there and have followed members of that team for quite a while. So
it's almost like they pushed it right up to the line.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Liverpool can register, 90% of their players have asthma?
Yeah.
So,
but I don't want to do that. Just win by being good. I'm too much of a romantic when it comes to football. And on that note, two good things from the statement itself. One great line at the top that said the club is determined to put football and performance on the pitch back at the heart of everything we do. Very much a kind of snarky remark towards the Glazers. I like that. The second one.
I was very surprised that was allowed to fly by the Glazers.
That was a Saturday. The Glazers were busy on their yacht that they paid for with our money. And the second one is our stated ambition to re-establish Manchester United as a title-winning club. We are pleased that Omar will be joining us to help achieve that goal so that once again, United fans can see, in the words of Sir Matt Busby, the red flag flying high at the summit of English, European and world football. Not quite the words of Matt Busby, but I like the sentiment. Very nicely done. Final thing on this, a question from one of our patrons, Tony Ryan. Berrada in, who's next? Which positions need new people and who could or should they be? Director of football's next, isn't it? Or sporting director?
Yeah, it's got to be. And it's probably got to be done in the next couple of months so that they, alongside Berrada and Ten Hag, can lay out a transfer strategy for the summer. I think you'd probably want that person in place by April at the latest, I would say, and hopefully even sooner than that. As to who it could be, I won't pretend to know enough about sporting directors around the world, but the biggest thing is you want someone who has a proven track record of good signings, working closely with a manager, but also being a strong negotiator, because I think the thing with United at the moment, and this is going to be difficult for anyone that is involved in transfers with United, we've had such a track record over such a long period of time of basically crumbling in negotiations and not having serious points at which we're going to walk away. And it's going to be very, very hard to overcome that. And it's going to take someone who's a very strong negotiator, and probably, honestly, it's probably going to require United to be in negotiations and walk away from signing a couple of players for that reputation to start to change. Agreed.
I don't know enough about the lay of the land in terms of football executives to give suggestions and names. There's plenty of good sporting directors out there. I don't know, but that would be the next one. Beyond that, it's fairly limited. What else is needed? United have made some quite good appointments at slightly lower levels, like head of data science. A lot of investments in data over the last 2 years. So it's unlikely that will get too much of a shake-up, because those departments, United were very much behind on those things, which was bad. But those departments are kind of just starting to get their feet settled. So I'd be surprised if there was too many more appointments beyond director of football, maybe an assistant, but there is already one in Andy Boyle. So yeah, interesting. But yeah, director of football definitely next. Can I have guessed the player clue 1, please, Jack, before we move on and talk loans and academy?
You may. So the first clue is, it's a little bit wordy, so I'm going to make sure I say this right.
Okay.
When I made my debut for the team I played for directly before Man United, on that debut, I played against Man United.
Okay.
So when making my debut for the team I played for directly before playing for United, I made that debut in a game against Man United in 1999.
1999, okay. I think I might have a guess already. No, I don't think I do. I thought I did. I think it's gone. But let me think it over and I'll tell you I'll tell you my thoughts. Yeah. Okay, let's talk a variety of academy things, beginning with some loan moves, which are somewhat a bit of a linking feature between the academy and Omar Berrada, because transfer activity for United in January has been very limited, except outgoings.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
First of all, Hannibal. We spoke briefly about this last week, but it hadn't been officially announced by that point. I think, as I said last week, but just to recap, I was surprised at the lack of chances he got after a few positive games in September. But at this stage, happy enough with a loan move for him to learn more. He needs to. He remains a bit petulant on the pitch. He needs to cut that out. My slight concern is Sevilla. He's gone there. They're in the dumps. They're in a La Liga relegation battle extraordinarily. Is that a great place to be sending him? What do you think?
I mean, what's been happening to Sevilla this season is quite bizarre in a lot of ways. I mean, I think Hannibal made his debut for them last night. I think they lost 5-1 to Girona. And from what I saw from Andy Mitten, it sounds like Hannibal got booked within a minute, which is about par for the course, really. Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. I think, to me, sending him to Sevilla kind of shows that United are very, very happy for Hannibal to move permanently. Because I think if this was purely about his development, you'd probably be trying to send him to a better situation. And obviously the deal was included.
Or somewhere in the Premier League.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. But I mean, look, if Hannibal is going to end up playing a bit part role in the team that is heading towards relegation, I'm not sure how great that's going to be for his development. And if Sevilla do end up getting relegated, I'm not sure they'll have the funds to make that deal permanent anyway. So it seems like a little bit of a strange choice, but it is obviously a club with great pedigree and other good players who, for whatever reason, just aren't performing at the moment. But it's a bit of a strange one for me that you'd send a player on loan to a club fighting relegation so badly at the moment.
Yeah, Alvaro Fernandez, left back. I think, again, as I said last week, if things had worked out better in the summer, he would have had the chances that were given to Sergio Reguilon, but the timings of injuries messed things up. It meant he had to go for chances, and in the end, he could have got them here instead. But I don't really blame anyone for that. To me, this is a really good loan move. Benfica will probably buy him at the end of it, but we apparently have a low-ish buyback clause, which is a positive. It seems a fairly good deal to me. He's a talented player. He'll probably suit Portugal and Spain more than he will the Premier League, but if he really is great, we can get him back, and Benfica have a good record of developing fullbacks like Alex Grimaldo, so seems decent to me.
Yeah, excellent move. And to be fair, I think very good from United that we've included, I think there's both a buyback clause and a sell-on fee included in the deal, which I think is great. And to be honest, I think this is a bit of a model for United in terms of how to deal with players like Alvaro Fernandez, who have shown good promise in the youth setup and then done well on loans, but where the manager doesn't see them fitting in, you try and accrue sort of 15, 20 million pounds from those signings, in not only get the profit from that, have a sell-on clause and a potential buyback clause. I think it kind of suits all parties. And like you said, Benfica's track record of developing young players is very, very good. I doubt that Alvaro Fernandez will ever develop into a player so special that you'd want to bring him back, but it's good to know that if you do, it's not going to be a Paul Pogba type situation where you're breaking the transfer record to bring him back to the club.
Yeah, I think he's really talented, but he's a very attacking fullback. That's I think he'd be better in another league.
Most of his experience outside of the U teams has been in teams that play five at the back, where he's been a wing back, which I think has suited him really, really well. Yeah. But obviously, it's hard to guarantee that.
He did really well at Preston, so I think he can suit English football. But yeah, it depends on the system very much. So the other loans, first of all, Mateo Mejia has joined Sevilla on a permanent deal. He had 4.5 years at United after joining from Real Zaragoza. Had a couple of 2 very long-term injuries that he did well to come back from. He's a good young striker, but it's a good move for him, and yeah, hope he does well there. Joe Hugo's joined Burton. He scored about 2 minutes into his debut for them, then got an assist for former United Academy player Mark Helm in his second game, so a good start for him at Burton. Reece Bennett's joined Stockport top of League 2, also a really good move, and Maxio Edadeli's joined Forest Green Rovers, and looks like Dan Gore's going to Port Vale. That might be announced by the time this comes out, or might be a few days away, but that looks pretty certain. Yeah, a bit tough for Edeli, who joined Forest Green Rovers, and then Troy Deeney was sacked as manager, I think about two days later. So that'll be an interesting experience for him. Yeah, now let's talk some more directly academy things. The FA Youth Cup. I spent quite a lot of time with the academy this week as part of my freelance role at United. Most of it is focused on the academy, and we're in the process of quite an exciting project academy-wise, which I'll tell you more about when I can another time, but it involved being around Carrington a lot this week. I wasn't at the FA Youth Cup game on Tuesday. It was a disappointing defeat in the 4th round at Swindon Town. Bolton and Mean scoring both the goals. United's under-18s just weren't at it really. Sloppy passing, leaning back while shooting, rushing things. If you want more kind of insight into that game, you can look at the weekly newsletter I've been doing this season, harryrobinson.substack.com. But yeah, just didn't turn up in the 3rd round against Derby at Old Trafford. Also didn't really show up, just too nervous. I think the sense of the occasion got to them, and similar things, but managed to get through with a slightly fortunate goal from Ethan Williams off the bench. The one player who did stand out again was left back Harry Amas. Jack, you can tell me, because I've said to you before we started recording, I'm involved regularly with the academy. That means I don't know what people know about various players. So you can tell me if the name Harry Amas or any others from the 18s that you're interested in have kind of been making waves or anything like that.
Harry Amas has been the big one that I've seen coming up again and again through all these under-18s performances. In the previous round of the Youth Cup against Derby, is it Jack Fletcher?
Yeah.
Gareth Fletcher's son?
Yeah.
His name was also popping up as the standout player in that game. To be honest, I don't know too many of the other under-18s players. I was saying to you just before we started, I was trying to watch the Swindon game and couldn't find a stream, but I was following along with Kane Smith, his text commentary for United District. It sounded like United just didn't really turn up on the day and had a couple of sloppy goals conceded in the first half. Yeah, one, to be fair, the second goal was a great finish. There was a defensive mistake, but it was a great finish. The first was an overload at the far post. Yeah, Harry Amas signed from Watford in the summer. United worked hard for that and competed against the other big English clubs for that and did well to sign him. And he's doing really well first season under 18s. I like the way he can clip a ball over the top. I like the way he can hold on to the ball, always looking for a pass forward. And to be fair, in this game at Swindon, it felt like he was kind of on a different wavelength to the attackers. He was ahead of them, and there were a few balls that he played in that were actually really good, but the forwards weren't quite on it enough to get to them. Jack Fletcher was really, really good in the third round, was still one of the better players at Swindon, but much less of an influence. And there's a few others that are really talented in that side, but it just looked like nerves got the better of them. I'm not going to name them because they're 16 or 17-year-old kids, but it just looked like nerves got the better of them, but they're really good. And the group coming through below the under 18s, United have 2 or 3 age groups back to back that look really talented at the moment, and you'd think next year, to be honest, I thought this under 18 squad would do a lot better in the Youth Cup than they did. I thought they had a genuine chance of winning it, so it's disappointing, definitely, but I think next year's group will be probably more balanced and have a bit more kind of star power to it, in the same way that you had Garnacho and Mainu in 2022, and Charlie McNeil, whose career has stagnated a little, but was certainly a star of that Youth Cup team as well. Anyway, the positive is they followed that Youth Cup defeat up really well. I worried. So going into the Youth Cup game, they'd won 11 out of 11 games in the league, plus in the Youth Cup, and they were through in the Under 18 Premier League Cup as well. So it'd been an amazing season before that. I worried that the Youth Cup defeat would derail them a bit, but I was at Carrington on Saturday morning. They played City, obviously, who have a fantastic team as well, often winning under 18 Premier League North. But United are now, I think, 12 points clear of City at the top, having beaten them 1-0, making it 12 wins in a row, which is a pretty extraordinary record. Yeah, I mean, especially in youth football, where the gaps between teams are a lot smaller than they are in the senior ranks. It's not normal for a team to go on a run like this. As we saw against Swindon, there are sort of unexpected results left, right and centre. I mean, to be 12 points clear after 12 games is an absolutely ridiculous record. And the fact that the second place team is at Liverpool, I think, and Man City that are second and third in the league, the fact that they are 12 points off of that already shows that for everyone else, that the normal way of under 18s football working, and that there are a lot of surprise results and it's quite unpredictable, has still been the way. And it's really only been United that have been bucking that trend.
Yeah. It's pretty rare.
Yeah, it makes the Youth Cup defeat all the more disappointing because it just shows how bloody talented this group is. And in a league basis, they've been absolutely unstoppable. And it, a one-off, well, I say one-off, the Derby County performance wasn't the best either, but a real one-off kind of bad performance against Swindon has really ended up derailing our chances in that competition, where you got to think we were the favourites based on how well we've been doing in the league. Yeah.
What's disappointing is I remember following the Youth Cup team in the year that they won it, and the third round, they made hard work of beating Scunthorpe United at home. 1-4-2 in the end, but Scunthorpe played really, really well. And several of those Scunthorpe players have gone on to start for their senior team. So they were a good team. And United struggled, but eventually 1-4-2 at home. They then went to Reading away. Reading were fantastic. And this was a United team with Garnacho and Kobe Mainu and Dan Gore and all of these players. Reading were really good and made it really hard for United, but we got a couple of slightly fortunate goals and then won the game comfortably in the end. But that felt like this Swindon game, where if United had got a goal early on, and they could have scored not not loads in the first half, but there were a couple of all right chances. But they'd already gone 1-0 down by that point, and it just felt like that one goal kind of derailed their confidence and composure entirely. United then pressured for the whole of the second half and were playing quite well, but just couldn't score. So yeah, it is a great shame. But to come back and bounce back in the league was good. I then watched the under-16s in a friendly against Charlton, which is always interesting seeing that age group. And it was behind the scenes a fair bit. And then Saturday afternoon was the second annual celebration event that the Academy puts on. So that's where all players from the age groups under 9s to under 16s attend, and their parents and all the staff members and a few guests of honour. So Wayne Rooney, Fraser Campbell and Eddie Johnson, the latter two Academy graduates themselves. Eddie Johnson now works for the Premier League in their education department. Campbell was receiving an award for achievements in football away from Manchester United because he had a very successful career, including one England cap. And Wayne Rooney has his sons at the Academy, so also gave a Q&A, which I'll play some clips from in a second. But I don't know, Jack, have you got any, because I'm aware that like getting to see this behind the scenes stuff at the Academy is I love doing it, and it's a buzz and a privilege. Have you got any questions about all of that? Because I never know really what to tell people. Well,
I guess in terms of the event with Wayne Rooney, what was it like, the interaction kind of between him and some of those players? Because it's sort of funny to think that, that was Rooney not too long ago. It was only 20 years ago, which is a long time, but it feels like Rooney is so much older than that. I mean, what kind of advice was he imparting onto all the players, and what sort of questions were they asking? Yeah,
so it was a bit mad at the start because obviously I tell you what's nice about it is it reminds you that you're dealing with just actual kids, because that can so often get forgotten in academy football. And when I spoke to quite a lot of the parents as well at the under-16s game, but also at the event, and they said one of the really good things United's academy does is maintain that, and this is something that Nick Cox, the director of academy, who I speak to a lot, references, maintains that kind of childish nature of childhood as well as they can by not trying to over professionalize. They claim other clubs do, and I think it's true. So you had parents there who were Liverpool fans and City fans, but whose kids played for United, and they had spent time at the other two, but whose kids played for United because they appreciated that. So the first thing, you got to this event and it's just like 160 kids or something, and you're like, oh, this is pretty fun. All getting to come into Old Trafford on a Saturday afternoon, all in their United kit, all just having a good time, loads of juice on the table, biscuits, and like a few screens set up with their highlights playing from tournaments in like Hong Kong, the Mediterranean International Cup in Spain, indoor tournaments in Germany, all these amazing experiences that these kids get, which is the thing that the academy is really keen to highlight at the moment. And they've ingrained it so much into my brain that I'm talking about it now, and that's not the question you asked, but it was cool seeing these kids like just having a good time. Anyway, then at a central table Rooney was sat, and he then did a Q&A, including which was hosted by the old Sky sports journalist James Cooper. It was good, it was interesting. Then there were a few questions that were sent in by the kids themselves, which also generated a really interesting response. So I'll play you a few clips. The first one comes from Rooney talking about what it's like to kind of be an academy parent, and then he goes on to talk about how he behaves on the touchline and what he thinks a key for academy players is.
How difficult is it being a parent when you're Wayne Rooney?
Yeah, the last few weeks have been more difficult because I've got a bit more time on my hands.
You've got to knock in more time,
it's great. Obviously, that's the most important thing to me, is my family, and football is. I've had obviously a long career in football, but to now eventually be able to go and watch my children play and take them to school and be part of their development, not just as football players, but as young people will be around them a lot more, is great, and something I'm really looking forward to having more time with them. No, I'm really quiet, and obviously I think the most important thing for young players coming to the academy is firstly to enjoy it. I think as a young kid you play football to enjoy it, and I remember when I was a child, my dad was quite strict on me, and I didn't like it, and so I didn't want to take that into my kids, so I let them play, and obviously have a chat with them after the game and ask them questions. I asked them questions and how they felt they done how they feel they can improve and really put a lot of trust into the coaches. That's their job. We have to let the coaches coach the players and ensure they get the best out of them.
Now, the second clip from Rooney is about just him commenting on the pathway at United. I thought was interesting as well.
Yeah, it's so important. Obviously, the pathway, as we've seen, I think Manchester United have an academy player past the first team in every game. So it's incredible really what the club are doing, and they keep progressing, keep trying to bring best coaches in, keep trying to improve, and more importantly, obviously keep producing great young players. And as we see today, some of the young players make the debut. I think it's great for the club. It's a great platform, a great ambition for all the young lads in today to aim for.
I thought it was really. I remember seeing a picture of. I dread to mention him, but Luis Suarez and Lionel Messi, I can mention the latter man, watching Barcelona's academy teams playing, and their two sons were playing for the La Masia team. I'm aware I just said the La Masia, but whatever. And they were just sat back kind of relaxing in sun lounges, not saying anything. And I remember it getting shared widely by academy coaches from loads of clubs saying, parents, this is how you should be acting. Leave it to the coaches to talk. And Rooney saying exactly the same thing, that parental interference is not necessarily the right thing. Yeah, you must have seen a lot of that refereeing at grassroots level, Jack.
Yeah, refereeing at grassroots level. I played in academies for 5 or 6 years when I was younger as well. And academies are the best environment for that already, to be fair.
Yeah.
There is still parents saying far too much, but compared to just a regular Sunday league game at grassroots level, academies are a million times better already than that. But it's a tough one because as a parent, you're obviously you want to see your kids do well, and often you've got up at the crack of dawn and driven, especially in academies, quite a long way to go and potentially stand out in the cold and watch this game. And obviously you want to sort of be involved and see your child play well, but it just doesn't benefit anyone. It ends up making the experience much worse for the child. It can sort of derail their love for football, especially if what the parent is saying is sort of different instructions to what the coach is saying, because it sort of pulls the player in two different directions. Look, I understand why it's hard for parents to sit back and just sort of watch what happens, especially if you're someone like Wayne Rooney or Lionel Messi or Luis Suarez. It's even harder because you probably do know more than the coach in some ways, but it's got to just be an experience that is ultimately fun and a developmental one for the child, rather than something where the parents are sort of taking ownership over the whole thing, which I think is often where it ends up getting to.
That idea of fun is so important. I think that's what I liked about this event, is especially because a lot of the time I'm working with the under-18s or the under-21s, that's when things do start to get professional. Like, they have professional contracts, and so things change. But I think when we think about the academy, those are the teams we think about. But actually, there's all of these other like amazing experiences happening beneath. And like, we got a few of the kids on camera, and we're like, what was your favourite moment in 2023? And they all said and spoke about like an overhead kick they'd scored, or scoring against City, or scoring against Liverpool, or whatever. And that was fun. And then I said, well, if there's one member of staff who you think like deserves a shout out at the end of the year because you really like them, who would it be? And that was like really heartwarming, because you get them all going, oh, Stu, Graham. And you're like, why are they the ones? And they go, oh, he's just really funny. He's always singing songs to us, or he's doing silly dances or stuff like that. And some of these coaches are like 30 and young, and so will seem young even to the kids, but others are like 65, 70, but that interaction with the kids is still amazing. So yeah, it was I was kind of, when there's some nice moments you get working for United, where there are moments where I'm very much not proud of the club, i.e. Mason Greenwood last summer. And there are other moments where you go, like, I'm as a fan, I'm proud of my club here. And Saturday was one of them, and they're always nice to them. We've got one more clip from Rooney's Q&A, and I just found it very funny, so I thought I'd share it.
I always had a soft spot for Manchester United growing up, and I know that sounds a bit strange being a Scouser, but it was really the only way I could get back at the Liverpool fans. It was, honestly, because Everton, when we won the Cup in '95, but Everton weren't really competing and winning trophies really on a regular basis at that time. It was in the 80s, but during the 90s that was a tough era for Everton. So it was my way to get back to Liverpool fans, and I remember finishing the European Championships in 2004 and speaking to Sir Alex, and I knew this was the only place I was going to come through, and no regrets whatsoever. Absolutely loving time.
Good to hear that the hatred for Liverpool has been long running in Rooney's life.
I just love that his immediate instinct was it was the only way I could get back at Liverpool. I don't think I've heard him. I've heard him talk about like wanting to join United before, but I don't think I'd heard him explicitly say it that directly. I loved it. It was nice seeing him talk again, and he discussed some of his memories playing for United as well. So that's always nice. He's childhood hero. So I love seeing him discuss United. Anything else? We've got a few questions from Don Wilson, one of our patrons, who asked a few interesting questions about the academy. He says things like, does the first team let the academy know of their need, say right wing, or like, was Kobbie Mainoo pulled just because we needed a defensive midfielder, or was that just dumb luck? And the answer is players are often picked out into the first team because of injury, but someone like Kobbie Mainoo, that's not the case. And United clearly have had a long-term plan for that. And I would expect the sale of James Garner was partly because United knew that Kobbie Mainoo was coming through. And we can all complain about recruitment and management of the squad at United, and it isn't good enough. But it's not so terrible. Those things do happen, that long-term planning. So effectively, you've got two people in constant conversation with Erik ten Hag, which will be the under-21s coach Travis Binion, because he's also head of the whole age group, under 17 to under 21, and the technical director Darren Fletcher will be talking to the first team coaches 2, 3, 4 times a day about certain players' progress, how they got on in first team training, how they got on in under 21s training, whether they're ready, anything like that. You've obviously then got like the physios and sports scientists and all of that stuff. It can come down to injury. Willie Kambwala's debut was obviously one of necessity, but Kobbie Mainoo's was not. So it's very much a mix. In terms of style of play, they do play similar styles. I think, Jack, both of us remember watching the under-21 soon after Ten Hag joined, and I remember thinking, this looks a bit like how Ten Hag has said he wants United to play. And funnily enough, the under-21 seem to be managing it more than the first team. But yeah, I think that similar style of play should run through the club. And I think you see that at all City's teams play exactly how Guardiola wants them to play. And Ten Hag has certainly made that thing. From what I hear, Ten Hag's kind of connection with the academy has been a bit lesser over the last few months. I think just as a nature of the pressure growing in and results being poor first team wise. He was involved more in the first season. He still has been involved a bit, but that kind of drip feeding of a style and demands has been a bit less this season, but somewhat understandable. I think that's why United need a really powerful and experienced sporting director.
It's right. I was just going to say, it's very common when a new manager joins a club, you see an article talking about them meeting with the under-21s coach and having this conversation about, what kind of style do we want to play out? I want the academy team to kind of mimic what the first team is going to do. And it obviously works really well in situations like Guardiola at Man City, where the manager is very, very entrenched and probably won't be leaving until they decide they want to leave. And so it means obviously you have time to kind of develop that image and bring youth players through that are molded in that kind of style. And you've kind of started to see that a little bit more over the last couple of years at Man City, for example. Players like Rico Lewis and Phil Foden and Cole Palmer come through that are better suited to playing Guardiola's style than anyone we saw in his first couple of years there. To go back to Don's questions, I think it's not dumb luck in terms of who gets pulled up from the academy into the first team. At times it is luck in terms of exactly when they get brought into the first team. Like you mentioned, Harry, it is often injuries that do it. You go back through a long line of United Academy players, both ones that were successful at United like Marcus Rashford and those that have ended up having quite short careers. In the vast majority of cases, the reason that they make their debut is because of an injury that often ends up putting them on the bench and then they come on. There are some players where that isn't the case, and there is this bit more of like a fast tracking into the first team, like with Garnacho and Kobbie Mainoo, for example. There are certain talents that the club deems so great that they will have kind of a specific plan about when they think that player will be ready to come in and contribute. And then from there, it really is just down to the performance of that player in the first team. Garnacho, for example, when he made his debut, he then didn't play too much. He made his debut, I think came on very closely after the FA Youth Cup final.
Yeah.
And then he didn't play again for a while. And then it was sort of the back half of last season when he started to play more and more. And obviously then this year, that's come more quickly. Kobe Mainu, I think, has settled into the first team much quicker. Again, benefited by injuries because we don't have as many options. And
still took 10, 11 months from his debut.
Yeah. So it really just depends, but it's not. There are certain players that the club will have a specific plan for and will sort of fast track into that position. But exactly when they get their spot on the bench or make their debut often is dependent a little bit on injuries or suspensions or availability, or at times the other way is getting a little bit lucky with having, an FA Cup or a League Cup game against weaker opposition where the manager feels they can rotate and give players like that a chance.
Yeah. But I mean, like, importantly, you wouldn't believe the detail that goes into those discussions. Yeah. Like, there was a 15-year-old at United who spent a week training with the first team at the end of last season. He won't, if he does at all, he won't play for United's first team for another probably 3 at the earliest, maybe 4, 5 years. But there's always that work going into how do we expose them to this at the right time. And Sir Alex was very good at it. And Gary Neville, I remember I was reading a piece recently from a while back where Neville talks about his debut, and he came on against Torpedo Moscow in the Champions League group stages, took a throw in, and that was his debut, and that was it. And the next week he was playing for the A team again. A week after that,
it happened with the Murray Forson against Wigan. He came on for the last 2 minutes.
Yeah. And then back into, and Neville was then put back into the A team. A week later, David Beckham makes his debut, and Gary Neville's thinking, hold on, why did I do something wrong? And so it's just, it's a way of kind of not giving too much too quickly. And I think with Garnacho and Kobe Mainu, United have done that pretty well over the last couple of years. But like, you look at the last 10 debutants of academy players, only one, I think you could say, has come in because of injury, and that's Willy Kambwala. All the other 9 have been given debuts either at the end of the season or in slightly lesser games, like young boys Zidane Iqbal and Charlie Savage, or Charlie McNeil against Real Sociedad in the Champions League group stages, Dan Gore in the League Cup, Amari Forson against Wigan. So yeah, it's a real mixture. But United's academy is in a good place at the moment. I say that objectively, not just because I'm a firm believer in it and I speak to them a lot. But yeah, it's in a good place with good people, and the first team could learn a lot from them. Right, before we go into Patreon Q&A, we're running over a little for time, but there's still plenty to discuss. Before we go into Patreon Q&A, can I have guess the player clue 2, please?
You may. So as a reminder, clue 1 was, when making my debut for the team that I played for directly before United, I made that debut in a game against Man United in 1999. Your second clue is, I was United's record signing when I arrived at the club, and after my move away from United to another Premier League team in 2003, I was the most expensive player in the world at the time in terms of combined transfer fees. So I was United's record signing when I arrived at the club, and my move from United to another Premier League team in 2003 made me the most expensive player in the world in terms of combined transfer fees.
Oh, I think do I have it? No, I don't. I think I do. No, I'm pretty sure I do.
Is the player you're thinking about the same one you had in mind after the first one?
No, I realised that the first one definitely wasn't right. But it had a reason to it. I'll tell you later. But I think I have one. So I'll text it to you during the ad break for all subscribers and the Q&A for patrons. Let's dive into that. Okay, we're coming out of the Patreon Q&A. We'll have Guess the Player Clue 3 in just a second, but before we do, a quick update on United Women, who suffered a 3-1 defeat to Chelsea. A Lauren James hat-trick. Lauren James coming back to bite United again, as she always does. There are calls for manager Mark Skinner to go. United had a mid-season training camp in Malta recently, and there was a debate there about fans singing Skinner out in friendly games. Anyway, that debate has gone. Those fans are still doing the same now in competitive games. Mark Skinner was pretty bullish in his post-match press conference after the Chelsea game. He said fans can do what they like, they pay the money to do so, but he's focused on success. I thought it was a decent response to it, but it seems that success is quite far away. United are several points adrift now, 10 points off the title race, looking like they'll struggle to finish in the top 3, to be honest. It's hard. The WSL is a tough league. Alessia Russo left in summer. Onabache left in summer. Goalkeeper Mary Earp's form has dropped a little. There's quite a lot of injuries right now. But United had a good summer transfer window, broke some records in terms of their signings, and have a good team. The results aren't good enough. In the end, I imagine, given the upheaval at the club, Skinner will stay, a bit like Ten Hag, but like Ten Hag, he's under big pressure. And I didn't watch the game against Chelsea, but the analysis in general seems to be United were a bit naive in playing a high line against Chelsea and didn't make the most of their chances, which again sounds a bit like United's men's team as well. One of the fan theories is that assistant manager Martin Ho, who left in summer, was really crucial to how Mark Skinner operated, and he's struggling without his tactical influence there, a little like Mourinho and Rui Faria, if you remember when he was United manager. United women next play on Wednesday, final group game of the FA WSL Cup. It's against City away at 7 p.m. They then host Aston Villa in a midday Sunday kickoff at Lee Sports Village. Now, Jack, let's have Guess a Player Clue 3. I've sent you my guess. You can tell me if it's right when we do the reveal right at the end of the show in about 5 minutes' time after we preview the Newport County game. Okay,
so the final clue is I moved to Italy from my native Argentina in 1996 before moving to United in 2001.
Well, it's confirmed my guess, but I won't reveal it yet. Let's talk Newport County, who are 14th in League 2 right now. They beat 10-man Wrexham 1-0 on Saturday at home. They beat Eastleigh 3-1 in the replay before that to secure this game against Manchester United. It's exciting, this, isn't it?
Yeah, a properly fun FA Cup tie. I mean, United didn't have
exactly what we've been hoping for ages.
I mean, we didn't have an away cup draw in about 5 years, and now we've had two on the spin. I mean, this is kind of what the FA Cup's all about, to be honest. They're sometimes not the most fun watch as a fan because like it's a bit of a lose-lose for United in a game like this, but it's fun and it's a completely different experience. And look, hopefully United will come out of this game and with fairly comfortable victory, but it's quite fun to see, players on £200,000-300,000 a week playing at, the kind of conditions and facilities that to be honest won't be that unfamiliar to a lot of us playing like grassroots football. And that it's just a complete sort of juxtaposition of everything that you normally see in football, and it's quite a fun spectacle to see, even if it is there's only downside for United really in this.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I was watching the debate on MUTV earlier today, and Simon Stone was talking, and I thought this was accurate. He said, when you look at a game like this, you look to see if Newport have beaten anybody of a similar ilk to United. And Newport have. They beat Leicester, they beat Middlesbrough, they gave Tottenham a really tough game, got a draw and then had a replay and lost at Spurs. They played City a few years ago and it was only 2-1 with a couple of minutes left. So they have form for making it very difficult for teams that should go there and win. So we've had our warning. We better go there and win. But I think it'll be difficult.
I feel like United have got better over the last 7 or 8 years at playing lower league opposition. When we were younger, ironically, when we were better,
Crawley, Burton, Barnett.
Yeah, so I can remember a lot of upsets happening. Either we'd lose or get taken to a replay, but it doesn't feel like it's happened in quite a long time.
No.
MK Dons,
Sheffield United,
biggest one, obviously, but
Middlesbrough in the League Cup semi-final.
Yeah, I'm talking more like League 1, League 2, rather than Championship.
MK Dons would have been League 1 at the time, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Remains completely ridiculous. Bristol City League. I'd forgotten about this one.
Yeah.
I completely forgotten that game happened. I don't know where. Normally, if I've forgotten a game, it means I probably missed
2018?
it. 2017, yeah. Yeah. That's probably the most recent massive one. I have a trivia question for you. You've been setting me guess a player, but I have a trivia question for you.
Okay.
When was the last time we played a team for the first ever time in the FA Cup?
Oh, God. Weirdly, this has connections to the quiz that Liam did because he asked a similar question, and actually that was part of one of my questions, which I'll tell you in a second. That was only played once.
But that also, that was European.
Well, the one that comes to my head, I'm sure we've played teams more recently than this. I always remember playing against Burton Albion in the mid to late 2000s, but I'm sure we've played people more recently than that. Did we play Shrewsbury at some point in the FA Cup or League Cup in like 2015?
I can tell you Burton Albion is the third most recent time we played a team for the first time.
I know that Bristol City was not the first time we played them because we
why?
won for our first FA Cup against them.
Yes, very well done.
In the final.
Any mention of the 1909 Cup final gets me giddy. And if you want to read about it, you can buy my book, The Men Who Made Manchester United. got to thump that plug in there every time possible.
The only other lower league teams that I can think of that we played recently are Tranmere, but I'm sure we've played them occasionally as well. Oh, wait, MK Dons has probably won too, wasn't it?
You have actually mentioned it, but it's neither Tranmere or MK Dons.
Oh, is it Shrewsbury?
It is indeed. 2016.
Okay.
And the surprise I have for you is we played Shrewsbury in February 2016 and we recorded our 7th ever episode of the podcast after that game.
Wow.
So in your WhatsApp chat, you will find a clip from that episode, which I thought was just funny to listen to. You can listen to 10 seconds of it or 40 seconds of it, however much you like, but I'll play it here for the listeners as well.
The old intro song.
Hello and welcome to Series 1, Episode 7 of the Manchester United Weekly Podcast, as we are left reeling in defeat to FC Midtjylland of Denmark, but there's a slight improvement away at Shrewsbury Town in the Cup. Yes, this is the Manchester United Weekly Podcast. I'm Harry Robertson, and as always, I'm joined by Jack Tate. How do you sum up the last week, Jack, with a 2-1 defeat, one of the worst I can remember in the last decade or so, and then a professional performance, a good one against Shrewsbury in the FA Cup, sending us to the quarter-finals against West Ham?
Exactly, as you said, it was a real low point Thursday night. It really was one of the worst nights that I can remember. As you said, the last sort of decade.
Weird, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I remember we did a similar thing when Rashford scored his 100th goal, because us starting the podcast coincided almost exactly with Rashford's debut. I think it was a couple of weeks later that it would have been probably about a month later that he made his debut against Midtjylland. And it was a similar thing there, just like things seem so different and yet so similar at the same time.
Yeah, I know, yeah. The stuff we're talking about seems so familiar. And how many managers have we had between then? Louis van Gaal, Jose Mourinho, Ole, Rangnick, Ten Hag. Yeah. All right, that's probably a nice way to wrap things up. But the final thing, guess the player. I'm pretty sure I was correct after clue 2. I wouldn't have got it after...
Also, tell us who came to your mind initially after the first clue?
Rio Ferdinand.
Right, okay.
I thought, initially I was thinking, there was something in the back of my mind thinking, did he make his debut for United for West Ham? Against United for West Ham. And then I thought, well, he went to Leeds after that, so it can't be true. And then I just assumed he hadn't made his debut for Leeds against United. And then when you said left 2003, there weren't actually that many players who left in 2003 and would have made a debut for a club in 1999 as well. So it came clear. In fact, you haven't actually said what the answer is yet, have you?
Well, I was going to let you reveal, because I know that you know that you're right.
And the answer is Juan Sebastian Veron.
Yeah, absolutely right. And so the reason why I included that first clue was because it was actually the same game that was mentioned by Liam in that quiz, because he made his debut for Lazio against United in the UEFA Super Cup in 1999, which, as we know from Liam's quiz, is the only time United have ever played Lazio.
Yeah. Final bit of trivia before we go. You will hear this week people talking about referring to Newport as the Exiles. If you're wondering, and I was, so I looked it up, why they're called the Exiles is because the club basically reformed around 1989, 1990, took on the name Newport AFC, and they adopted the name the Exiles because they had to play their home matches for the 89-90 season at the London Road ground in North Gloucestershire town of Moreton in Marsh, 80 miles away from Newport. So that's why their nickname is the Exiles. And yeah, that's a good way to end. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you've enjoyed a pretty varied show. For more from us throughout the week, you can find Jack on Twitter at
UTD Tate, Tait.
And you can find me at Harry Robinson64 and the podcast itself at UTD Weekly Pod. Thank you for listening. Have a great week. Goodbye.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Today, we discuss Miro. Today, I want to talk about the hellscape that is technical diagramming, right? Everybody's nodding their heads right now, And there is a potential solution that I want to share. There was one name that several people brought up. I did some digging, and it's kind of nuts how much this program Miro has for developers. I have to share this. It could potentially be a game changer for you. So my favorite part about Miro is that half the work is already done. Like right now, typically we spend hours starting diagrams from scratch, gathering information. You get buy-in from every team. That's a lot of work to do. But Miro has a full set of integrations with the tools you're probably already using. And they also offer open APIs and SDKs for custom solutions for all those niche diagramming use cases we have to do, right? So the end result is the same, but it doesn't take forever. It's a massive, massive time saver. I'm transforming basic flowcharts and network architectures, and it all lives in one place. So are you using Miro? Have you used it? I want to hear.
That's Miro.com.